If you watch the previous video based on the Leon 1.9 PD TDI EDC16 and you looked at the video about duration, you will have seen that it is fairly complicated, and if you want to do some kind of remapping or changes to duration, what you can or can't do depends an awful lot on the file that you're looking at. Now what I'm going to do here is start to look at start of injection, and to do that I'm going to look at start of injection 9, and I'm going to look at a variety of different things as I go along. First of all, I've got start of injection 9 here, and I've deliberately picked this one because this is the one that's probably going to be used a lot of the time. Now it also ties in with not just start of injection, but it ties in with the duration map selection over here. So what I've done is I've color coded this to start with to give a sort of vague clue as to what might be selected. In other words, I'm saying that this area here, the pale blue area, might select duration map 5, and this sort of turquoise aquamarine blue colour might select duration map 4. The pinky colour would select duration map 3. This sort of orangey area would select duration map 2, and the yellow would select duration map 1. And over here on the side here I've got the duration maps, but we don't need to look at those at the moment because I've already put up some information about duration anyway. Now the reason I'm doing this is because you can't talk about start of injection without mentioning duration, because they are one and the same thing in many ways, so you can't really have one without the other. Right, now let's look at what's going on here. If we assume that up here we are probably using duration 1, then that's quite handy, because the previous video that I did about duration talked about duration 1 and possibilities of changing duration 1. Now let's look at what's going on, because here we've got, and we might as well look at the maximum values, we've got 5,000 revs per minute. And as we get to this end, which of course is the end that most tuning people would be interested in, we can see what start of injection is doing. It's plateauing out 24 roughly, 25.76, and then 27, 27, 27, 27, and so on. Now if we look at that as a graph, which I've done here, you can see that pretty much all of these, for each injection quantity and revs per minute, they all, if you look at the different revs per minute curves, as the injection quantity gets somewhere in the region of 40 milligrams, they all start to plateau out. Obviously they plateau out at different places, and they are plateauing out at different places because of the varying durations. But if we assume then that there is a point at which start of injection does not occur any earlier, then when we look at these we see that 5,000 revs, once we get much over 40 milligrams, will stop advancing injection in any way. In other words, it will be 27 degrees. So from 40 milligrams onwards we will have a start of injection of 27 degrees. Now that is very important because it relates to not obviously just start of injection, but it relates to injection duration, because if we look at that and say, well, there we are, we're going to start duration at 27, so as the engine's turning, when it gets to the point where we are 27 degrees before top dead center, injection will start. And if we assume that we live in some magical kingdom where injection literally starts instantly, then we can say, right, injection instantly starts at 27. There is no milli microsecond hang on, but just instant injection. So that 27 degrees is the exact point, instant injection of fuel, We know that we are going to be wanting to inject at this point, according to this map, 60 milligrams. And if we go to look at the map that we've been told we should look at, the duration 1 map, so if we go to look at the duration 1 map and we look, there we have 43.85 degrees. So in other words, 44 degrees more or less. So what we've got then is we've got, I'll put it there, a start of injection which is 27 degrees. So that's what we've got there. In fact, it would be better probably if I put start of injection up there, wouldn't it? And if I say that's my start of injection point, I'll get rid of that. Let's just format these to ordinary numbers. So well, I just have cells numbers, and we'll have 1 decimal point. That will do us for now. So we'll have start of injection. I'll make those, come on, I'll make those bold as well so we're clear. So we're going to have our start of injection point of 27, and we know that that's going to give us a duration value which we just saw over here, 43.85. So we're going to have a duration of 43.85 degrees in there. Oh no, I'll make that 2 decimal points. Sorry, I was a bit stupid there, wasn't I? Number 2 decimal points. So okay, so we've got a start of injection of 27 degrees and we've got a duration of 43.8 degrees. So we can calculate end, I'll put E, a little O and a big I. We can say when injection is going to end, can't we? I can call that end of injection. So I've got start of injection, an amount of time for injection, and an end of injection. So I can say to myself, right, if I start there, this is where I will end. Now remember, this one is before top dead center. So if I assume that that is 27 degrees, if I then say to myself, right, now this number here will equal that number minus this number, that seems to be complaining for some reason. Oh, it hasn't got enough space for the minus sign, that's what it's complaining about. So we'll just extend that out a fraction. So there we go. It's giving us minus 16.85. In other words, 16.85 degrees after top dead center. So what we've now got is a start of injection at 27, a time for the injection of 44 degrees, and because that injection is so long, we are not going to finish injecting until nearly 17 degrees after top dead center. Now we would be pushing our luck to change those figures by very much, because look what would happen if we tried to change these by very much. If we try to change the duration here, what will that do? Well, we can easily see, can't we? Because if I just drag that calculation down and I say to myself, okay, what I'll do is I'll give myself a longer duration. I'll say to myself that I think I'm going to inject 47. So I'm going to inject for 47 degrees because I want more fuel. But then I leave the start of injection in the same place as I did before. And sorry about the way the numbers have gone silly on me. Let's just format those. Number 2 decimal places, that will do. Okay. Now I'm finishing at minus 20, in other words 20 degrees after top dead center. So I'm starting at 27, I'm going for a duration of 47, and I'm ending at minus 20, which is 20 degrees after top dead center. Now you can see that if I'm not careful, I'm going to come really unstuck here, because if the designers thought that 27 and 44 there were okay, so that they could end at roughly 17 degrees and still get power, then that's okay. Now remember, at 17 degrees after top dead center, the piston is starting to go down before the combustion stroke is even pushing it down. Now obviously the engineers have worked out that that is just about okay there. Now why didn't they just say, well okay, well we'll increase that and we'll make it 20 or 30 or 35? Well, they didn't, because if they're not careful and they go to something like 20 degrees after top dead centre, the piston may already be moving too fast down the cylinder for the actual explosive combustion to catch it up. In which case, we are not actually adding any energy to the piston, because the piston's moving away from us faster than the explosion that we're giving. So we can't just decide, oh well, what I'll do is I'll just move these values as much as I like. I'll just say, well, I'll have that to be 47, I'll have that to be 27, and I'll end at minus 20, because without testing the engine on a test rig, we can't know if that will actually be possible in terms of giving us any power. We might well find that having gone over that figure of close to 17, we actually get less power even if we inject more fuel. Now, it almost seems like I'm talking about duration, but of course I'm not talking about duration, because what I'm talking about then here is, well okay, if I've got that problem, what do I do? Well, I could say to myself, well, I still want to inject 47, but now, because I know that that's a ridiculous thing to try to do, what I need to do is I need to extend start of injection. In other words, I need start of injection to occur earlier, and I need it to start a good 3 degrees earlier if this figure is anything to go by. So what I do is I say to myself, right, I'll start that one at 30 degrees, and now I'll inject 47 and I will end at 17 degrees after top dead centre. Now I'm back with another problem, because how safe is it to start to inject too early before the figures that were being used in the original file? So in other words, if I start to inject at 27, when exactly does the actual burn take place? Does it take place exactly here? Does it take place at some magic point between? So in other words, the fuel is burning at some magic point. As soon as start of injection starts to occur, there is some burning all the way through to end of injection. And again, without knowing the exact manufacturer's figures, I'm stuck to know what degree of combustion might be occurring around about top dead centre or even just before it. Now I know that if I go too far, I might be having an explosion going on that's chasing the piston down the cylinder and therefore not giving me any power. But what if I start my injection early? Well, there is a danger here that if I start my injection early, the piston is still rising towards top dead centre when a degree of combustion starts. Now, as long as that degree of combustion isn't enough to affect the piston's upward speed, then the piston will carry on, hit top dead centre and be forced down the other side by my explosive quantity that I've put in. But what if I get this a little bit too advanced? If I get this a little bit too advanced, I might inject just enough fuel at just the right time to stop the piston dead in its tracks. And so the engine literally stalls under the power of its own explosion. Now, of course, if the car is doing 5,000 revs at that point and I lock the engine literally by trying to put in an amount of fuel at the wrong point that tries to blow the piston back the way it just came, I've just smashed my engine. And this is quite easy to do with engines, because you might make a change to start of injection that seems absolutely fine and you get away with it. You might even test it on a rolling road and it seems okay. And then one day it will be a lovely warm day and you will be thrashing the car down the motorway really fast, and you will reach some magical point at which this injection occurs, like it has done on many other occasions, but all the conditions combine just right and there will be an almighty bang and a good proportion of the engine mechanical bits will come out of the engine. So if you are going to touch start of injection, you need to take a very long, hard look at these figures and what you think might be possible to do with those figures. Now, very often there are limiters built into the file so that if you make silly changes, they get ignored, but not always. So you need to be careful. And so I always recommend to people that if they're going to change start of injection at all, that they make very tiny changes. So in other words, if you've changed duration and you now feel that you must change start of injection, you don't really change start of injection by changing start of injection, because what you need to do is look closely at your duration values, look closely at where that will leave your end of injection, and then look at where you might want to shift start of injection to allow that slightly longer duration. So the whole thing really starts with duration, even though start of injection selects duration maps. Seems daft, but that's just the way it goes. So you start with your duration, you look at where the start of injection might be, you look at where that means you might end, and then you look where perhaps you should consider changing the start. Now, I suggest, and some people have argued with me about this, but I suggest you never make a change of more than 1 degree at a time. So in other words, if you decide that you want to increase duration and you want to do it in terms of thinking to yourself, I might have to move start of injection because of what's happening at this end, then I suggest you never go more than 1 degree either way. So in other words, you say to yourself, well, if I make that 44, 45, I'll move this one to 28. So I will make those two changes together. So when it comes to making changes to start of injection, the changes that you might want to make are very, very, very minimal. In other words, you might want to add an extra column on the end here, and for the most part, most of these values you won't really want to touch, but you might want to change these values here. But you only want to change them, as I've just said, according to calculations you've already done with original start of injection, change duration, end of injection. Now, give an example here. I'm not going to go into this in big detail because once you've got the hang of it, it's fairly simple. If we call that one 44, so we say that one's going to be 45, then that gives me an end point of minus 18. I'm not happy with that, so I say to myself, right, I will still use 45, and then in here I will use 28. So I will go 28, 45, 17. So these are my new figures. So then I would just go to this, I would put in my new column, let's say it's going to be 65. I would look at the figures for each point. So this point here, I've decided that if that is 65, what I would like this one to be is 28. So I would change this one to 28. So I would have 65 here and 28 there. The formatting is daft again, but I'm not going to bother to change that. You can see what I mean. So that would be 65 and this would be 28. And then I would make exactly the same calculations, these ones, for these positions, but I would probably not go back all that far. I would probably go back maybe a little way back at first, or maybe go all the way back. It depends. Now, this is where sometimes start of injection changes can be beneficial without giving you a massive great big kick at this end. So in other words, sometimes a slight change of start of injection down this end can make the car feel much nicer to drive. The big problem with fiddling with start of injection is that you will have quite a change to the emissions, and so you need to think carefully about what you believe the environment around you is worth. Because by changing start of injection and making it earlier, you can have quite a big impact on the amount of nitrogen oxide that comes out of the engine. So at the end of the day, you need to think to yourself, do I just want a better car to drive that I'm happy with, I don't care about anybody else? Or do you go for the best you can get without poisoning the atmosphere? Now the problem is with that is that VW have already done the best they can get without poisoning the atmosphere. So if you want better than VW could do, the chances are you're going to produce more pollution. So that's a question for you to bear in mind. Right, I'll stop there because simply if I go into more detail on this, I don't think it's going to help, because you would have to make these simple calculations for yourself and test them, and it doesn't really matter how many different ways I explain this, you'd still be making the same calculations over and over again and then testing to see if they're possible. One point I should make is that the Seat Leon 1.9 PD EDC16, the 105 brake horsepower, is one of the worst possible examples for this, because duration and start of injection are pretty much maxed out right at the beginning. So you're pretty much stuck with saying to yourself, if I want more performance out of this engine, I can have a very small amount of more performance, maybe get an extra 10-15%, but after that I would have to have bigger injectors. It's as simple as that. Whereas on some files, when you look at them, you can see that there is quite a lot of leeway left. You look at the duration values and the start of injection values, and you can see that there is a fair amount of room left to increase injection quantity and give yourself more power with the existing injectors. And that's why I'm not going to go into more detail on this, because there is no point, because it depends what file you're looking at. Right, I'll stop there then.